Well, welcome to a premiere. We haven't had one of these for a little bit. And today I'm going to be showing you exactly how to protect and pack a Swedish beauty that you're going to be shipping and or receiving in a case. Sometimes you're the buyer and you need to give advice and direction to the person selling it that might not have a clue how to pack that Swedish beauty that you purchased, and then you receive it on your end and there's damage and it's frustrating to everyone. So this premiere will set you up for success. And what we're shipping today is a machine that hardly needs an introduction. It is a 19E Special that came to me from NGD Veterinary Relief Service LLC. Boy, is that a mouthful. NGD Veterinary Relief Service LLC. And it came by way of Nancy Decker. Nancy uses this machine to do all kinds of stuff with her veterinary relief work, and it died. And when I dug into the machine, as you might remember, I discovered all kinds of damage internally, as if the machine had been dropped from a pretty good sized height. And the owner doesn't remember anything like that happening, but it could have happened when they were making one of their moves and a professional mover was handling that machine and or case. And that's why whenever you make a move, boy oh boy, you gotta really protect your sewing machines if someone else is gonna be touching them, because all they see is metal and they don't have a clue that that machine is delicate and is vulnerable, right? Any machine is delicate and vulnerable, and we've got to protect it accordingly. We got to treat it as if it's fragile, right? All right, I'm gonna stand back up while I still can. So what I'm doing right now is I'm cutting out the address information that has the shipping address on it. I'm not going to show it to you for obvious reasons. The other thing I'll mention real quick that has nothing at all to do with this boxing that we're doing is I did have contact with Andy Tube, and some of you know Andy Tube because you've watched his videos. And you might remember that he had reached out to me about a year ago asking if he could push his customers and inquiries to me because he was having challenges with his health. Well, the recent contact from him indicates that his health is still kind of on again, off again. He has good days, he has bad days, and he shared with me that he's suffering with cancer. And cancer is one of those persistent things that really doesn't go away, right? And I asked him about the idea of doing an interview with him, you know, when he has a good day. But he said interviews are not really his thing. So regretfully, I've got to report that it doesn't look like I'm going to have the opportunity to interview Andy Tube. And that's a loss, isn't it? Because he's such a great guy. He's got really an interesting history, I'm sure. And like Alex Askeroff from the UK, I would love to be able to capture that. None of us know how long we're on this earth. And particularly when we're struggling with health issues and battling cancer, we just don't know what tomorrow will bring. So hopefully he has a change of heart. I'd be happy to do just an audio interview because you probably noticed if you follow him, and I did as well, that he never shows himself. All you see is his hands. That's kind of the way I started doing my videos way back when, is all you saw were my hands. And then eventually I stepped into the picture. Andy never has. And so if Andy happens to catch this, because I know he does watch my videos, Andy, I'd be more than happy to do an audio interview as I've done with others. And that way you could feel comfortable if that's part of the discomfort of the idea of being on camera. Okay? So at any rate, not going to be interviewing Andy Tube unless he changes his mind, okay? I'm trying to cut in the line, so it might take me a little bit longer. Okay, if you've never watched one of my packing videos before, this will really be an eye-opener as far as what packing on steroids looks like. Because I take the packing process incredibly seriously, and I know that people from around the world have adopted this packing process, even as there's technology available, as you may have seen on one of the recent unboxings, where they've got this chemical foam stuff now where you can actuate it, and then it kind of fills in around the sewing machine, etc. I showed you in that unboxing that it leaves a lot of areas that there are gap points. And also as the foam dries, it becomes incredibly brittle. And brittle is never a good thing when you're packing. It takes away the cushion factor. And so what you'll see in this boxing today, this packing video, is you'll see that I really build on that idea of building a cocoon of cushion around that sewing machine, both inside of the case and also the case itself, creating two fields of protection for that machine. It's so important that you do that because we hope for the best, but we plan for the worst. We have to do that, we do. So after I get this entirely done here, both the machine on the inside and the case as well, creating another barrier of protection, then what's going to happen is this tote will end up going into this particular plastic tote. This will become the outer shell of all of the other packing effort that we've taken on. And you can see, this is I think you can see, this is an 18-gallon tote. There's a lot of manufacturers that make these. They're not all created equal. Let me just say that. This one is made by Mainstays, and they tend to make a little bit more of a sturdy container. Now, that's not to say that I haven't had these arrive on the other end where they've been handled very roughly, and I've had these arrive to the customer with the container having cracks in them because they've taken that big of a hit. But they do afford a real good outer skin, and they also, if that particular package is left on the porch of a customer because they're not home, maybe they're at work or they stepped away for a little bit, this is going to protect that machine and make it literally waterproof, so that if it's raining outside, snowing, unlike a cardboard box that will absorb all of that moisture, this will repel that moisture and keep that machine and the contents safe and dry. And that's the reason I choose this method over a cardboard box. So let's begin the process, and the process starts on the inside of the case, obviously. We'll get Nancy's machine out of here. I'll also remove all the other contents because we also pack that as well. So we've got a foot controller along with the machine, and we pack that as fragile. We've got part of a case that has the old upper tension. If you watched the premiere I did on Nancy's machine. And if you didn't, check it out, because you'll really love to see this 19E Special perform and do its magic. And again, the unique thing about the 19E Special, the reason they call it special is because it has the cam stack engineered into the rear of the machine rather than having to insert those black cams. You can see the cam adjuster right there on the rear of the machine. And it doesn't give you as many stitch options as some of the other green machines, but it gives you a nice assortment. It gives you a 3-point zigzag, it gives you a standard zigzag, and then it gives you a blind hem stitch as well. And some of the 19E Specials are equipped with a 1 amp motor. This particular one, if we zoom in on it, we can look and see whether or not it's a 1 amp or is it one of those 1.5 amp ones. So Nancy's has the standard motor in it that came with a number of the E-class machines, the 19 class and also the 21 class, like the 21Es. Most of them are going to come with a 1 amp motor, as you can see on the nomenclature plate there. But there were some that came with 1.5 amp motors as well. And you know, if someone was really determined and they sent me their Swedish Beauty, their 19E Special, and they said, Scott, I know when you get done with the motors, the 1 amp is going to perform pretty much as good as the 1.5, but I really would like to have a 1.5 amp, kind of bragging rights, you know what I mean? Then I could, by all means, switch out a motor on one of these machines and upgrade it to a 1.5 amp. But again, if it's strictly bragging rights, I get it. But if all it is you're saying, I want more power, when I get done with your 1 amp motor like I did on Nancy's, it's going to run neck and neck with a 1.5. You're not going to notice a difference. And you might have seen, if you saw the progress shots on Nancy's machine, there also was a lot of damage, like I said, on the inside of this, as if it had been dropped. And that's again why you don't want to go with a standard service on one of these Swedish Beauties. You want to send it to the workshop where I can take it through. Originally I said 126 step process. That's going up to 130 steps now in the process that I take a Swedish Beauty through when it comes into the workshop. From the bobbin over here, the bobbin winder I should say on this machine, all the way to the faceplate. From one end to the other I go through the machine and I surgically and meticulously go through that machine. If my process weren't that detailed, I would never have found that damage inside of the machine that I demonstrated the repairs of in my progress shots for Nancy's machine. So that again is a difference. If you go to a standard service center, they're going to go across these oiling points and that's going to be about it. They might adjust the hook timing if they know how to do it, but all the other steps that are so essential to optimizing that Swedish Beauty will never, ever, ever be done in that 30 to 45 minutes of service that it will receive at a standard sewing center. And that's why my process for those 130 steps takes about 12 hours, 12 to 14 hours if I find damage and there has to be repairs done to the machine as well. So 14 hours versus 45 minutes. You can do the math on that and say, does it make sense? Because my service is going to be comparable in cost to most of those service centers. And you're going to get so much more. Oh my gosh, so much more for your money. So I'm going to go ahead and start the packing process now. And you can kind of watch me do it. And most of my moderators on the YouTube channel have seen this, but they've seen this process done before. So if you have general questions about what you're seeing, they should be able to help you, because I'm not going to be looking at the chat. Otherwise, reach out to me afterwards and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. But I think I do it in such a way it's pretty self-explanatory. The other thing you'll notice on the machine is that it has a different upper tension than it arrived with. It arrived with a Singer upper tension on it, this right here. And upper tensions sometimes can be interchangeable, but on Swedish Beauties, because of the space between that presser foot release mechanism and the rear of that upper tension, you've got to choose very carefully. So rather than putting an aftermarket into Nancy's machine, I went with an original upper tension unit that would be in this style and of this era for the green machine. Always the best choice to go with original when you can. So a couple general things to start with. You'll notice that I've got painter's tape on all of the tag points where you would thread the machine through. I do that so that when the customer gets it, if they're not sure about how the machine is threaded, the machine is already pre-threaded. They can review the threading of the machine, and then they can put on their own thread confidently, knowing how to set it up properly. I've also got the needle in the down position. I've got the presser foot down, and I've got material between the bottom of the presser foot and the feed dogs. That's the best way to store a machine when it's not in use. And always, 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 when you're going to ship a machine, you always prepare it in the same way. Not to mention, it's kind of cool as a customer to get that machine with some of the sew-offs right underneath the presser foot that you saw during that live premiere. It's just kind of cool to have that happen. That way, not only did you see it on live camera, but you also get a chance to actually touch those sew-offs, look at them, handle them in your own hands, and just really get a good feeling about where that machine is at now. Also on these Swedish Beauties, they've got a large hinge door that opens on the front to access the bobbin case and the raceway. You always want to make sure that you tag that down as well. Even though we're going to be stretch wrapping it, it's just another field of protection to make sure that somehow that door doesn't come open a little bit and get snapped off. We do the same thing with the rear hatch as well. If it's one of the green machines where that hatch opens, on the 19E Special, there's 2 bolts that hold that assembly on, so we don't need to do it on this machine. We're also going to be providing extra protection to all of the knobs on the front that are plastic, including the upper tension, that are extra vulnerable to getting damage to them. Also the same thing on the bobbin winder, which is also partly plastic on the side as well. We're going to put extra protection on that also. Come out of my shot again. I was zoomed in and you probably didn't see what I was pointing at. So what I was pointing at again is all of these knobs that are plastic are going to get an extra field of protection, along with the upper tension and also the bobbin winding assembly as well. If there's an on or off switch on the rear of the machine, that's also going to receive additional protection as well. On this particular model, the on-off for the light is right underneath here, protected in the harp space, so we're not going to be adding extra padding to that. Just kind of come off the tripod real quick, and I'll show you where we're at this point, and then we'll begin building on the process from there. And on this machine, because the cam stack adjuster is plastic, in all likelihood I'll add extra padding to that as well. We also have an extension bed, and I also treat that as vulnerable. And so that also, you'll see that I'll also do packing and protection on that as well. Even though it's going to be housed inside of the case, we'll protect it as well. And then when a machine is serviced in the workshop, I take it through a sewing Olympics. If you've never seen that, then you're really new to this channel, because I do it every single time. And I sew through a wide field of materials, anything from leather to cotton to satin to vinyl. I mean, pretty much just a wide scope of things. And I test the strength and the versatility of the machine, and also always look at the stitch quality. Our goal is a page 34, which is a near perfect stitch. So these always go back to the customer, so again, they can review that premiere, and they can actually be holding that sew off as they witness it being sewn on that video that will be on this channel forever and ever and ever. So they can always go back and just kind of reminisce as they watch their machine dancing through these sew-offs. Because a lot of customers are not going to be working with all of these materials. It's kind of fun to see their machine sewing them, and it's a great way to reminisce on the capabilities of their machine once it gets a dose of the workshop magic. So I'll set these to the side, but we are going to add these to the equation during the packing process. what I'm going to do with this cord that I just wrapped is I'm going to tuck it right up against the back of the pillar like this, and then use the stretch wrap to anchor it in place. And you might be watching this and saying, don't we normally put the foot controller in the harp space? We do on most machines, especially if they're directly wired to the machine. We'll do that automatically. But with this case, we've got specific compartments in the case that are designed to house the foot controller and also the accessory box. So we're gonna take advantage of those. You notice I'm kind of doing a crisscross here because I'm wanting to close off the entire top of the machine. Even though we're not going to probably be using packing peanuts inside of there, I want to totally encapsulate it so nothing can get inside of that area of the machine and possibly cause the machine to have an issue. So we've added the extra padding across the front of here. I'll probably go around it a few more times. And I'll be creating one more pad. I've added that pad to the cam stack adjuster in the rear because it's plastic. I've got to create just one more small pad for the right side of the machine over here by the bobbin winding assembly. To make sure that if it takes a real bad hit, let's say it takes a hit that's so bad that it actually compromises the case, the carrying case that this will be inside of, we're still going to be able to add that extra protection to the machine to try to preserve and protect the machine in the worst possible scenario. I'm also going to go across the top of the machine and reinforce that stretch wrap that we did to encapsulate the machine. You never want to just leave stretch wrap on its own. You always want to add strapping tape to it to reinforce it. And I refer to this as strapping tape because I'm strapping it down on the machine, but it's not traditional industrial type strapping tape that would have the extra strands running through it. This is just more of a heavy duty packing tape, but you'll hear me refer to it as strapping tape quite often. So now we created a nice sturdy shell across the top of the machine, and now we're going to go around the outside of the machine and reinforce that with this strapping packing tape as well. But first of all, I need to cut a piece to go over this bobbin winding assembly over here so that we know that that's going to have extra protection as well. Just like anything, you want to identify the vulnerable parts of the machine that you're working with. It's going to be different on every machine. Within the green class, it's going to be pretty standardized. But when you get into other machines like Elnas and Kenmores and Singers and that, they're going to have other areas that are vulnerable that may not be a direct matchup to this machine. And that's why I've done so many packing videos using different machines as the guinea pigs, if you will, so that you can get a flavor for identifying those vulnerable parts and give just a little bit of extra protection. A little bit of extra precaution will save you a lot of headache in the end. And if you're involved in restoration in your shipping machines, it'll save you from getting a very angry customer. So now what we're going to do is we're going to anchor down all of this stretch wrap on the body or the head of the machine. Pretty low on this tape, but I've got another roll offside. You notice I kind of go up and down with it. I don't just go in a single direction. I kind of cross it over. I'll go up and then I'll come back down at an angle because it gives it even more strength that way. Now, stretch wrap and packing tape like this is going to come in different strengths. So when you order it, if you decide to order some for yourself, look at that strength factor. Typically, stretch wrap is rated in a gauge type scheme. So you'll have like 16 gauge, 18 gauge, or higher. And I usually go much higher than that. My strapping tape is usually right around 60 or 80 gauge. And then I also go with a heavier tape as well. gently pat it down. When you pat it down, it kind of make sure that it's sticking completely to that stretch wrap. Now you may have noticed something if you're really an observant person and a really good student. You might have noticed that I don't take the stretch wrap and that I leave a gap point underneath here. It's because of the design of the Husqvarna case. With those two compartments in the back of the case, the bottom part of the base needs to be able to slide underneath there. And so when you put down your stretch wrap and your strapping tape, you don't cover this section from here to there so that you've got that gap point there. Does that make sense? Otherwise, you won't be able to slide it in the case once you get it packed. So I do sometimes add a layer of stretch wrap on this, but I always leave that gap point in that space underneath the free arm area so that it'll fit in the case properly. And I can actually show you what that looks like if you're having trouble visualizing what I'm saying. I'm going to balance this machine for just a second. Set it right here. So you can see the way this case is designed. It's got this space underneath here, which is for that base to be able to slide underneath. So if we make this all a single unit, we might be able to get the edge underneath there, but then we won't be able to push it all the way to the rear. This is where our accessory box is going to go once we get it packed and protected. This is where our foot controller will go up here once we get it packed and protected on this upper level. And then this strap is usually something that by the time I get done adding that extra protection, I'm not able to pull it all the way in and snap it. But normally when it's not padded, you can snap this on, and then this acts as a little retainer to hold the foot controller and the accessory box in those compartments so they don't slide out and get banged around. Okay, well, you can see as we slide this in, and I'll actually put this up on the tripod because right now I've got to do this with two hands. Again, we wrapped it like this so that that free arm on the rear of the machine will be able to slide underneath those compartments. And we've got to be mindful of that even when we get all the way down, because we're going to be adding extra padding to that as well. So you can see right now the machine fits in there nicely. We're able to close it. But as we build our additional layers around this with bubble wrap, we've got to make sure that we don't make it give it too much girth, too much width. Otherwise, when we try to close the case, we're not going to be able to snap it shut. So just be mindful of that. Plus, we're going to have the extension bed in the front of here, which will take up even a little bit more space and clearance. So we've got to factor all of that in as we're doing it. Usually on the inside of the case, as a general rule, I add 2 to 3 layers of bubble wrap, no more than that. And then on the extension bed that goes in the front of the lid, I put a single layer of bubble wrap on there. So you can use that as a general gauge so that you don't get into a situation where you get done and then all of a sudden you can't fit it in the case. So our next step now is going to be building that layer of layers, I should say, of bubble wrap. So, and again, when we put the bubble wrap on, we're going to leave a gap point underneath the free arm area. so that we can still get it into that case. And again, about 2 to 3 layers of bubble wrap. It's going to be extra padding that a lot of people would consider almost excessive. But I always like to assume that in the worst case scenario, the tote gets destroyed. The damage is so severe, it even compromises the security of the carrying case. So the machine on the inside has to have a field of protection all unto itself, if that makes sense. So at this point across the front we have 3 layers. I'm going to go around the rear of it and then stop right around the area of the faceplate. Now, if you know what the next step will be, go ahead and type it in the chat if you would. What are we going to do next? What's our next step? While you're typing that into the chat, I'm going to get a quick drink of water. Well, if you said stretch wrap, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. We got to anchor this down with stretch wrap now. So that is our next step. And again, when I'm doing this, I'm going to be leaving that gap point underneath the free arm. So we can slide it into the case. Next we use our packing or our strapping tape to anchor down the stretch wrap that we just put on. And start again all the way on the bottom of the free arm, but leave that gap point so it'll fit into the case. Kind of pat that down a little bit so that it sticks nicely to that stretch wrap. So I'm going to kind of rotate this so you can look at it from different angles instead of coming off the tripod again. I'll just kind of rotate it around. You can look at what we have at this point. Notice again the space that I left underneath the free arm so that we can slide it into the case underneath that little gap point in the rear of the case, just below where those compartments are for the foot controller and the accessory box. So what I do now is as a courtesy to the owner, Nancy. Again, Nancy is out of Ohio, works with NGD Veterinary Relief Service, LLC. If anyone wants to Google it and throw it into the chat, just a brief description of kind of what this company does, that would be cool. That would be totally cool. Again, N like Nancy, G like George, D like Decker. So NGD Veterinary Relief Service LLC. And it's out of Medina, Ohio. Medina, Ohio. If you want to type something in the chat to help us out. That way we all kind of have an idea of what this service provides. What do they do? And if we can't find anything on the internet that tells us what they do, then having a marketing background, that would be a great insight to Nancy to say, wait a second, we're on the internet, but no one knows what we offer. No one knows what we can do for them. So then she can, as a business owner, say, all right, I need to work on that. I need to get that out there in the index information so that everybody knows what we do and what we can offer. Yeah. I love marketing, don't you? It tells the story of that company. And that way you can help more people. How cool is that? So I'm just reinforcing the top again. And we are going to add a little bit of bubble wrap to the top as well. But again, we have to be aware of how much vertical clearance we have getting that into the case. We got to be aware. And we do have a little bit of overlap already. You can see that. We've got overlap here and there, but then we have this space right here that's vulnerable. So we have to at least protect that center core of the machine head to make sure that if something catastrophic happens and that case and tote and everything are just crushed down, that we're going to do everything we can to try to safeguard the machine inside of all of that packing stuff. All right, so we've got a really good start, don't we? And again, I realize that this is packing on steroids, but any time we spend in this preparatory step, or these steps I should say, is going to save us a lot of headache in the end if something really, really bad happens. Everything builds on everything else to create a fortress around this irreplaceable 19E Special. This is packing music, baby. Yeah. All right, let's add a little something to the top here. And this bubble wrap I have right here is an industrial bubble wrap. It's a little bit more rigid, and also it's a lot stronger, so I don't have to put as much of it on top to get the same level of protection. I recently had Doreen and Kevin and Maddie that visited the workshop, and they know I'm pretty hardcore, but when they saw me walk up to them and I still had bare legs and it's now into the 30s and 20s, they were like, when are you going to put long pants on? December 1st. December 1st. It's just a thing. Just a thing. Yeah, we'll go with 2 layers. This stuff is really, really hard. Hardcore, hardcore. You notice I just kind of mold it and then take it down. And when we do an extra piece like this on top to protect it, we're not going to add stretch wrap to it. There would be no sense in doing that. But we are going to add a layer of the packing strapping tape across the top to create a harder shell and to protect the bubble wrap that we've added. There goes that tape across the top to reinforce that bubble wrap, give it a little bit more stability. And notice through all of these steps, we've maintained that gap point so we can get it back into the case. That's the big deal. Hopefully you can read that. It says front. I want to make it really easy for Nancy when she pulls this out to know, and obviously it's going to be in the case this way, but in case she pulls it out and is going after the foot controller and stuff, She knows exactly where the front of the machine is. And that's important because, again, we've got all those knobs that are sticking out, even though we padded them. If she's using a certain cutting tool or something like that, she knows to be extra careful as she's working across the front of the machine. There's so many more areas that can get damaged with the knobs and the upper tension and everything. So I try to make it super easy for the customer. Try writing while you're dancing sometime. Try it. This is the packing cheerleader team. Listen to them. All right, let's get that foot controller ready now. Foot controller, again, I've gotten so many machines at the workshop, sometimes sent by the customer, sometimes sent by a seller that sold the machine to a customer, and the customer requested that they send the machine straight to the workshop so I can make sure that it's squared away. I've had a number of them arrive where the foot controller is just like this, sitting in the box and kind of bouncing around and banging against things. Not a good idea, especially with a Swedish Beauty foot controller, because they got so many components on the inside, like the resistors and I mean, there's so many different delicate electronic parts in there. That was a fun song. I could totally listen to that one again, but I won't. I'll be good. And because we're going to be adding extra layers to this foot controller was designed with a certain height, right? When they made it, when it's fully expanded, when it's not compressed, and we're going to be adding bubble wrap to it and stretching tape, stretch wrap and strapping tape, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So what I usually do when I wrap it is I actually compress it as if you're pushing it on with your foot, and it saves us about another 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. So when we add those extra layers, we can still get it into that compartment space. Get it in there and it'll fit, hopefully. We have to be aware of not making it too thick, because otherwise we won't be able to fit it into that little cubby space. This is what we have so far. So what I did is I just trimmed off the edges so that when I tuck that in and under, it doesn't push it up and make it too wide or too girthy to fit into that the little cubby space. Now we got the accessory box. It's got the old upper tension that was with the machine when it came in, which was not proper, was not the correct one. We've got the old belts. We've got a light bulb. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a sheet of bubble wrap now and compress this down and then stretch wrap it so we can immobilize this as much as possible so this stuff is not banging around in there. Most of this is going to be stuff that the customer will probably throw away anyway, because I replaced the upper tension. They could probably hold on to this and maybe use it on another machine if they get a Singer machine. I doubt that they're going to go back to the incandescent bulb. They'll probably just toss that away. They'll toss the belts away, and then the rest of the accessories will stay in the box. But we still protect it just as if they're going to, you know, they're going to keep it like a treasure. So nothing fancy, just kind of like that. We have 2 layers of the bubble wrap, and it just creates a little bit more tension against that, so that as we shake it, there's not a lot of movement of stuff in there as we've seen in some of the unboxings. Matter of fact, I'm going to add 1 more layer, create even a little bit more tension on there. Oops. There's a lot of static electricity in the workshop right now, so it makes it a little bit more challenging sometimes when you're dealing with something like this that really is a magnet for static electricity. And my little secret that I use down here, at least, so I don't get shocked really bad, is I'll periodically mist a little bit of this on the carpets, which tends to be the biggest drawing point for that static electricity. You can do the same thing in your sewing room in the winter. Just mist a little bit of plain water on your carpet in your sewing space, and it'll reduce that static electricity factor dramatically. It's no fun to get shocked, is it? So you can see now, just with that little effort, and then obviously we're going to add bubble wrap to the rest of it as well. Just with that little effort, you know, there's a little bit of movement inside, but it really has immobilized that stuff dramatically so that it's not banging against each other. You can see I'm just going to add a couple little wraps around here as far as the bubble wrap to protect the entire case. Now that we added that little bit of bubble wrap as a filler to keep that stuff inside of the accessory box just a little bit more immobile. Now again, we've got too much on the ends, so we got to trim that back just a little bit. We're dealing with a compartment space that has very limited clearance, so we don't want to be loosey-goosey with the edges or anything else, otherwise we're not going to be able to fit it in there. And here we'll put top just so that Nancy knows right away as she opens it. She doesn't want to have this end facing down where we have that extra padding. You can see the color difference right away. And that way she doesn't dump the stuff all over the floor. Again, packing can be a practical thing. It also can be an opportunity for you as a consumer or a seller to show extra caring for your customer or the recipient that gets that machine. So you can see we have the foot controller and the accessory box tucked away now in this case. We may not be able to snap this because, nope, we can. Perfect. I kind of kept it lean and mean, so we're able to get that retainer strap on there as well, which is fantastic. Now, I don't generally, because of the way that you'll see me pad this case, I don't generally try to create an extra barrier of padding on the bottom of this bed of the machine, simply because there generally is not enough vertical clearance to do that. But when I slide it in, if I've got a little bit of a buffer in there, then I might add some extra padding to the bottom of the machine. The other reason I generally don't do it is it makes it a lot more difficult for the customer to get the machine out of that space if it's pressed in too tight against the top, so I don't want to make them frustrated as they're trying to get it out either. We do not have a lot of space to work with there. It is really, really tight. Plus we have to still get that bed in there as well. Normally I always pack the bed in here. If I get into a weird situation where I simply can't fit it, then I'll put that bed adjacent to the machine, padded properly in the tote with a field of peanuts around it. But I think we can do it in this instance. Otherwise I'll go to plan B. And we're snug enough on the top of there. With the extra padding and protection we're going to do to this case, I'm not going to add an extra barrier of protection on the bottom. It'll make it a little bit difficult for the customer to get it out of there. But I probably will fill in. I've got a gap point here and I've got a gap point there with some extra bubble wrap. I'll kind of tuck it in there to keep the machine from wiggling from side to side. But you can see we've done a really good job of creating a fortress inside of the case. The case is designed as a practical tool to carry the machine, but it's also designed to protect the machine. But we're not going to rely on the case. We're going to do our own thing on the inside, and then we're going to protect the case as well. So it creates even an additional field of protection for the machine. So we've got this original envelope that Nancy sent with the machine that has an owner's manual. I don't remember what else is in here. That's it, just an owner's manual. So got the owner's manual here. I'll actually take it out of this manila type envelope, which we really don't need at this point, because I'm going to build all of this together with the sew-offs and the extension bed. And I'll probably spread these out a little bit. If you happen to miss that premiere on Nancy's machine that we're packing today, you'll see me go through all of these different sew-offs. It was around Halloween time, so I did some sew-offs to show the slow gear in action and being able to maneuver around the eyes of the little pumpkin that I did. And this is saddle grade leather here. Then I've got another pumpkin that I kind of stitched around as well, and this is protected full grain leather. Wait, no, I'm wrong. That's vegetable tan leather. Vegetable tan leather, saddle grade leather, and then finally I did a round and around and around on this protected full grain leather. Again, to show the control that the machine had. And I did part of that with the slow gear and part of that with the regular speed. Again, the slow gear on these green machines is going to take the machine from full speed all the way down to 1/5 speed. It doesn't change the power of the machine in any way. If the machine is equipped with a 1 amp motor, it's going to have 1 amps whether you use the slow gear or not. The slow gear was designed for the very reason that it receives its namesake, slow, gear, slow. It uses a gear reduction to slow the machine down so you have better control. From full speed to 1/5, it doesn't increase the power. I see that on the internet all the time, and it's annoying to me because it's not true. Then I did other show-offs like this additional veg tan leather, 2 layers of that to demonstrate the power of the machine. Then we sewed cotton to show that it can handle the light side as well. More saddle grade leather, just all kinds of sew-offs. You can watch the premiere and see the machine actually sewing all of these things, which I think is really cool. And again, it's going to be there. Here's some of our genuine elk hide, 2 layers of that. So, you know, once I'm done with a Swedish Beauty, it's not only beautiful and graceful and able to dance through the delicate side, it can handle the heavy duty side as well. Very, very easily. So I'm going to put the manual here. I'm going to lay these sew-offs out so that Nancy can check them out when the machine reaches her out in Ohio. And now we're going to take all of this and we're going to use stretch wrap to anchor to the back of the extension bed. And I chose the back because there's a little bit of a recession in the back with the little grooves and openings. It'll compress it down and take up less space so that we can hopefully get the case closed. If we can't, then we'll go to plan B. So you can see here we have all of that anchored into the back of the extension bed very nicely, so we can keep it all self-contained and in the same spot, and we're not going to hopefully damage any of it in the process. That's the goal, is to get it anchored together but not damage the hook or anything else. So now we're going to put a little bit of bubble wrap around this to protect this extension bed. Even though, again, it's going to be inside of the case, we still want to create a little bit more protection for it. Well, probably because we have a limited amount of clearance between the front of the lid, when we close it, we're probably going to go with about 1 or 2 layers, probably 1 layer around this. And again, it's just my thing, but I always put the bubbles facing out, so they're like little airbags, taking the impact of anything before the item on the inside has to take it. So, and I can see I cut that a little bit short, so let me, rather than piecing it together, I'll go ahead and just cut another piece. the beauty of bubble wrap is if you ever cut a piece and it's a little bit too short, just hang on to it. You can use it for another packing when you're sending another machine, maybe to wrap a foot controller or an accessory box. So there's no loss. Talk about cutting it to fit. Oh my goodness. It's about as close as you can get, right? That happens sometimes, doesn't it? You lose contact with the tape and then it sticks to itself, and that's about it. So here I'm using the packing tape, or the strapping tape as it is, to tuck all these areas in around it very, very closely so that we are able to take up as least amount of space as possible. I'm just checking for edges now to see if I have any edges that have not been tagged down. And all in all, I feel really good about that. You can kind of see it from all different sides here. So now we're going to see whether or not this will actually fit. If it's too wide, then we'll go ahead and put it in the tote with the machine, which is just as good. The good thing about these cases is they do have a little bit of elasticity and flexibility, so I can kind of push the machine back a little bit, and I'll check the spacing, and then we'll add that extra filler on the inside of the case to keep the machine from moving side to side. So we know now that we can ship it with the extension bed in there, with all of the sew-offs, the owner's manual, and everything else, which is the preferred way to do it. I can get it there safe if we had to put the extension bed in the tote with the machine, but I prefer to do it this way if I get the measurements down just spot on. And you can see it's snug in there, the way that door kind of flopped open. That's okay. We want it to be snug. We would much prefer it to be snug than loosey-goosey. So now I have this gap point here and here. I've got to fill that in with some extra bubble wrap to keep that case nice and rigid in there so it's not wiggling around. could also use some foam as well, if I have any left. I think I may have used that on the last packing job. I'm going to check the fit of this stuff and see how it works. You see this stuff here. I always save packing materials when a customer sends their machine to the workshop, and then I can repurpose it for another packing job to benefit another customer. I think that's good use of materials. Makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to try this on this side, which I think will work very, very nicely. And it doesn't have to be through that whole cavity. It just has to be able to immobilize the machine, which is what this pad has just done beautifully. So that worked really well over there. This is going to be a little bit too tight for that unless I were to cut this down and then slide it into that space, which we could probably do, but I'm reluctant to do that because we might use this for another machine that needs this much clearance. So I'll probably just fill that with bubble wrap. So between using the bubble wrap on this side to fill that little cavity and using this pad on this side to fill the other cavity space, we now have totally immobilized this machine so that it's not going to be jiggling around inside of this case. That's the way it should be. So now we have to see if we can get it closed again. I don't think we'll have any trouble, hopefully. Unless you're on camera, then it may be. And on these latches, you always make sure you kind of push this down and then push that latch so you know it's locked completely so it doesn't pop open. We're going to strap it down anyway, but so our next step now is we want to anchor these hinge points to take pressure off of them and also to add an extra field of protection. In the event that they pop open, the case is not going to spill open. So I'm going to turn it like this and bring it a little bit off of the edge of the workbench, and we'll focus on anchoring down this side. We'll spin it around, we'll anchor down the other side. And you always use stretch wrap and the packing strapping tape. And again, as you come around, kind of press it in so you can take the stress off of that hinge point. So like I'm doing right there. That way the strapping, the stretch wrap and the strapping tape is taking the stress off of that hinge. Press it down, spin your case around, and do the same thing to the other side. compress it. Compress it. Let that stretch wrap kind of hold that hinge then, so it's not creating a lot of stress on those metal points. That's how some of them get broken in transit, is all of that pressure is being pushed against those metal points and they eventually give out. And if you've ever had one of these cases and you're like, which one is the front when I pop these hinges, just know that this little flap here, the shorter flap, is going to be the front of the case. So you want to open the case with the shorter flap towards you, and then obviously lower it down and you can access your machine that way. I've had people put the machines in upside down in these cases. I've had them facing the wrong way. How they even got them in there is amazing, but this is the proper way here. And now we've got a case that is absolutely secure, but now we have to protect the case, which means by protecting the case, we're going to be protecting the contents, the machine inside. So now we need to build our fortress around the case. A very, very lengthy process, but a lot less time to do this, even explaining all these steps to you, than it is sitting on the phone with a very angry customer and or with the courier, USPS or FedEx or UPS, and trying to meet all of their demands of eventually honoring a claim. It's a nightmare. I can only imagine it's a nightmare. Never had to do it, thankfully. So now we get our bubble wrap and start to build our fortress around this. And in this case, we will add that extra padding to the bottom that the machine didn't get because of the space limitations inside of the case. And as I've said to people that have reached out to thank me for showing them how to pack a vintage machine like this, some of them are restorers and sellers. Some of them are machine flippers. But they said, I have shamelessly adopted your packing method and I claim it as my own now, and I'm getting so much praise from my customers. Does that bother me? Nope, not even a little bit. Because all of you know where this started, and more importantly, their customer is going to benefit from what we do. And ultimately, that vintage sewing machine wins because it arrives undamaged. That's a win. That's a win for everybody. All right, let's try to get this. This is going to be too bulky to do this on the workbench with all my friends, so I'm going to have to do it in stages. We'll kind of build it up. Let's see here. We'll see how many layers we get out of that. That'll be phase one right there. And obviously when you tag this down to start to work around the outside of the container, you'll want to anchor it on the initial point on this stretch wrap that here is already on the case. You don't want to ever put tape directly onto a case like this, this is like a material case, and it could damage it. So just line it up as best as you're able, get your tape, and then kind of put a little tag on there and you can kind of anchor it into place. So now we're not going to damage Nancy's case in any way. And now, so I don't knock any of my little friends over, I just got to carefully try to maneuver it around the case and slowly start to build my field of protection. And because these are perforated on most of these bubble wraps, as you're pulling it around, you want to, put some tensile strength onto it to get it nice and snug, even though we're going to be using stretch wrap to anchor it down. But just don't pull too hard, otherwise you're going to be breaking it. You'll break it into little squares, and then you'll be like, well, that didn't work so well. And we're probably, out of this first section that I tore off of the main roll, we're probably going to get about 2 to 3 layers, and we're going to be aiming for right around 5 layers. So we're going to be getting about halfway there, maybe a little bit more than halfway. So we're up to, across the front, we're almost up to 3 layers. We're up to 3 layers right about there, and then we're 2 layers, 2 layers, 3 layers on the back. So we'll go around it approximately 2 more times with bubble wrap. But right now we need to anchor off this end, obviously. Should be just about right. We go a little bit over, it's fine, because we're going to have a lot of, once we've gotten the machine into the case, we can not be as worrisome about clearances, because we're going to have plenty of clearance around this inside of that 18-gallon plastic tote that I showed you before. So I'll start in the same spot, because again, we have 3 layers here, we only have 2 here, so I'm going to start right here. So right away we'll even it out as far as the level of protection all the way around. And again, for my preference, I always put the bubbles facing out. Now we're going to have to try to walk this around again without knocking over any of my friends. You have to kind of untwist it as you go. There we go. I almost took out the doctor. Sorry about that, doctor. So here's our ending point right here. We're going to anchor that down. So now we have 5 layers around the entire case that has that irreplaceable 19E special on the inside. What's our next step? Type in the chat what our next step is. Well, if you typed in the chat, you got to use your stretch wrap now, and then we'll follow that up with the packing strapping tape. You're absolutely right. And here I try to tilt the case a little bit and get underneath the edge as best as I'm able, like this. Gives us a little bit better anchoring of that stretch wrap. A little bit better anchoring. Back down again. Try to go over those edges just one more time if I'm able. A little bit too much pull there. That happens sometimes. You pull a little bit hard on that stretch wrap and it stretches too far and it breaks. There we go. Let me anchor off that end. Some of this stretch wrap is designed so it's a little sticky and it kind of sticks to itself. Those are really nice when you get those, because if you let go of that, it doesn't start to go like that. And you're chasing it and trying to get it to stop so you don't lose all that, the tensile value of the tightness of that stretch wrap holding that bubble wrap in place. Now we're going to use our strapping tape, our packing tape, to give all of this a single unit. Pat it down so you get a nice, it adheres real well to that bubble wrap and to the stretch wrap as well. Makes it all a single unit. Now you'll notice right now we've got this cocoon of bubble wrap, but it's not attached in any way to those strapping points here. So now we need to take tape and bring it across here to join these two together, because right now they're just loose, which is not good. Usually 2 pieces is sufficient. Now we've got these all as a single unit, which is perfect. Now we need to focus on what is our plan to protect the top, what is our plan to protect the bottom. So I'm going to kind of lean the machine back. This is the front, obviously. I'm going to lean the machine back and we're going to focus on building some sort of a protection for the bottom and then ultimately the top. But first of all, again, for the benefit of the customer, I'm going to write front on here so that they can tell straight away where the front is. You guys are really smart. I don't need to explain, but I'll say it anyway. I put the tape over the top of the permanent marker so it doesn't smear, obviously. So, again, just little thoughtful things that make a difference. Make it a little bit easier. So now we've got the bottom of the case, and we've got to come up with a plan to pad this area. And this is again some packing material that came with another customer's machine that I'm going to repurpose now. And on the bottom of here, because I'm also going to have a field of peanuts underneath it as well, I'm probably going to go with about 4 or 5 layers of bubble wrap across the bottom of here. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll actually double that. We'll go for 8 since this seems to fit very nicely. So this is the level of thickness of the bubble wrap that'll be on the bottom, along with a field of peanuts underneath it as well. It'll give it a nice cushy ride. Just kind of sealing off that edge so that these aren't shifting around a lot. And I do overlap it probably about 1.5 inches. I don't put it right on the edge of the bottom. I overlap it about 1.5 inches so that if somehow it comes loose and gets displaced a little bit, it's still going to be protecting the bottom of that machine. If you put it right on the edge and it comes loose, you might have a bare bottom or a bare edge on the bottom of the machine, which would not be a good thing. I've shown that a couple of times in unboxings where someone will have packing material in the bottom of the box and just kind of put the machine on top of it, and then in the process of being shipped, that padding material on the bottom shifts as well, and all of a sudden the machine is resting on the bottom of the cardboard box. Definitely not the best plan. So we have it anchored on this side right now. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pick the machine up, slide this underneath the bottom, and then see whether or not we need to cut any off, and then we'll trim the edges off as well so it's nice and snug. I made that look pretty easy, didn't I? It's about 40 pounds. So you can see right now, there's the bottom of our case. We've already anchored it on the bottom side. Now we're going to bring this up and pull it nice and taut, and then we'll focus on the sides after that. Pull it nice and snug, and then anchor it down in place so it doesn't come loose. And we'll do additional anchoring when we're done. You can see this is what we have right now for the bottom. I'm going to put it on the edge. We're going to focus on tucking these edge parts down now, and I probably will trim them just a little bit because it's a little bit way too long right now. And we got so many layers of that bubble wrap, it's really quite a challenge to cut through it, which is good. Probably have to use different scissors though. Kind of like a haircut, just don't cut it too short, because we want to have some overlap. You see what we've done there, right? Now the side we've done, we're going to put facing down now, and now we'll concentrate on this end here that we haven't done yet on top. Nice and tight. You can hear kind of the tape is under so much stress. The tension or the reverse tension of this is like trying to rip it off. So we got to lay down more tape right away to reinforce that, kind of up the side of the machine. And we'll go around it again once we're done with this, just so none of this comes loose in transit. Really press it down nice and firm. See this little flap here, we have to tuck that in now. This is like Scott's barber shop here. Yeah, take just a little trim off of the edge there. Just don't make it too short. I don't want people to know that I got a haircut, you know what I mean? Kind of like the other side, I'll just show you. Oops, I see a little bit of a pull away there. Oops, I got to change the camera angle. It's okay. Come on a little bit on this. Okay, so our bottom is really secure, but now we need to re-anchor this again because of all the stress that those parts we tag down are under a huge amount of stress right now. And we put quite a bit of tape on there, but we're going to go around it just one more time because the last thing I want to have happen is for this to somehow come loose and compromise the protection that we've tried to build. Press down. Our sides are protected, front, back, bottom. Now we have to do something about the top. And the top could be as simple as creating a bubble wrap barrier over the hinge portion so that anything that's compressed, it'll protect that, and then we'll still give access to the handle. But I'm going to see if I can cut a little slit and go across the entire top, which I think will be even a better way to do it to afford protection across the entire top of the case. With all of the preparation we've done, the machine is incredibly well protected right now. We could ship it probably like this, but we're committed to constant and never-ending improvement, CANI. C-A-N-I. So even though this might be sufficient, we're going to make it better because we're committed to always making things better. You end up with about 3 to 4 layers on top, approximately. And there are no markings on here. I just eyeball it. After you do several thousand machines packing, you kind of get a little feeling for it, you know what I mean? So that's 4 layers right there, which is pretty, I think that's going to be enough, because we're going to have peanuts over the top of this as well because of the extra space in the tote. But we don't want to waste these edges. I'm not going to just cut them off, so I'm just going to tuck them over, give us a little bit more protection on those hinges. Yeah. Perfect. You can kind of see what we did there. And just be mindful as you kind of center it on the top of the case that you're not going to cover up what you just wrote as far as the front and the back. You can always rewrite it, but you don't have to. Why do it, right? So let's start anchoring this down in place now. All right, and just like we did on the bottom, now we're going to go around it several times to reinforce that seam of the upper portion padding that we just added to the body of the padding. We don't want this to come loose and make the top of the machine case vulnerable. Press it down. Now right now we've got raw bubble wrap on top. We want to give it more stability, but we also have to make a plan to make a slit so we can give that customer access to the handle so they can lift it out of the tote more easily. Otherwise it's kind of tricky to get it out and they might drop it. So, but we'll reinforce the outer edges first. And again, we do this because bubble wrap unprotected by packing tape is not nearly as strong as adding a single layer of packing tape like this to it. It makes it a lot stronger, less likely to tear. We've gone through such an effort here to make this machine safe. We don't want to cut any corners that are going to compromise our effort to protect this irreplaceable vintage 19E special. Whenever you crisscross strapping tape like this, where we went lengthwise and then we put a couple widthwise like this, it's going to make that so much stronger and more stable. So you can see right now, if you look real carefully, which I can make easier by coming just temporarily off the tripod. Right now we've got incredible protection for this machine, both what we did inside of the case and now outside of the case as well. And the only thing we have left now is we need to, you can see the outline of the handle there, we need to carefully make an incision there so that the customer will be able to reach through that incision and pull that handle up to lift it out of the case more easily. Again, thoughtful packing means a lot to customers. It really does. They have told me so. So we'll just kind of walk around here. You can look at again what we've done so far. So I'm going to put this back up on the tripod and we're going to make that incision now. Right about there. I just left a portion of that without the strapping tape, because if I try to cut through this with the strapping tape, it makes it more slippery. Here I just have raw bubbles perfectly. That's where I'm going to try to make my incision. And I'll try to do it with scissors so I have a little bit better control, hopefully. There we go. See the handle? I've got the screen pointed the wrong way. I'm actually touching the handle right here. So I'm just going to expand that incision just slightly. That way the padding will still protect the handle in transit, but the customer can very easily open that up and grab that handle to lift it out of the case. See the handle right there? So I'll just kind of tuck that back over now that I made the incision. And without closing this, I'll just reinforce that edge a little bit. And now I'll write a little note to Nancy saying, access handle right here. Turn this around so I'm writing it so she can read it from the front of the machine, which would make a little bit more sense. You can kind of see that in the shot. Nothing fancy. Just wrote access handle here. A couple of arrows. She'll feel that little gap. She can actually touch the handle right there. And then she can just kind of flex that bubble wrap, get a hold of that handle and lift her straight up. Make it a lot easier for her. Just going over the permanent marker again to keep it from getting runny. Well, I don't know about you, but that's what I would consider to be packing on steroids. Our next step will be to put this into the 18-gallon tote. Once I put it in there, I determine how much clearance I have on top to build a base of peanuts for this to rest on, but I don't want to push this up too high and make it vulnerable to the top of the lid from a real significant impact. Even though we have it padded real well, I still want to have a little bit of a buffer on top where I can put a layer of peanuts on there as well to provide even better protection. And then we'll have the field of protection all the way around this machine cocoon to protect it from every angle that it could take a big hit. And that's how we're going to get it safely to Medina, Ohio, to my friend Nancy, who runs NGD Veterinary Relief Service LLC. I had to look at it. That's a lot of words to remember. And then obviously we use our strapping approach to the lid as well to keep that safe. So nice, I love it. Perfect snug fit. And we're going to have very little vertical clearance to work with. If I put peanuts on the bottom, we really don't have to because I have so much, we have a padding on the bottom of like that thick. But if I do that, it'll be a real thin layer of peanuts. I'll let you take a quick peek into the case before we wrap this up. Kind of see how this is set up. So here on the front side, we've got all of this that's going to be filled with peanuts. Here on the side, we've got a cushion protection as well, where we can fill all that with peanuts on the back side also. And then ultimately on this side too. But you can see if you look at it like this, we don't have a lot of clearance where that lid is going to snap on. So again, we don't want to push this up too high, because that's going to be pressed against the top of the lid, and if it takes a big impact, it could hurt us as far as our fields of protection. So I don't know. I'm going to have to look at this. I might add a little bit of peanuts, but not much. I'm almost inclined to say none. And we've created such a great base for this packing job that we really don't need peanuts down there. We'll just build the peanuts around it. Kind of what I'd be inclined to do. Well, I hope this is helpful to you. Once the inside of this is prepped with peanuts, the next steps are we obviously put the lid on, and I'll use this little block to cover Nancy's address, even though you could probably look it up on the internet easy enough with her business name. So once we get the lid on, then we're going to take stretch wrap like this, and we're going to go kind of bring it to the edge of the workbench. We're going to go around the edge here like this to anchor it down. I usually go around probably about 8 to 10 times to get that lid nice and secure, and then we're going to follow it up with the packing tape. Go around this about 6 to 7 times, press it down nice and good, flip this around, do the same thing to this side. Now we're going to turn the case this way, do the same thing to this side. Obviously, first of all, with the stretch wrap, about 8 to 10 times, then the strapping tape, probably about 6 to 7 times. Flip it around, do the same thing to the other side, and then where these two seams intersect, you want to use packing tape to join those two straps together. In other words, you're going to have one strap running like this, you're going to have the other strap running like this. Where they intersect, you want to go over that with a long piece of tape to join those two together so that they can't slip or slide either way. Then put your label on and your fragile stickers, and you can have a real high degree of confidence that no matter what they do to this, going to Medina, Ohio, or to Honolulu, Hawaii, or to Switzerland, or to Japan, or wherever I've shipped any of my machines, that they can give it quite a bit of abuse, a lot of abuse, and that machine is still going to arrive without a scratch. That's our goal, right? We don't want our irreplaceable machines to be damaged in any way. So with that, packing 101, packing 101, packing 101. We have fun, don't we? Yes, we do. All right. Thanks for watching this. I hope you apply every principle that I showed you so that your Swedish beauty can arrive no matter where you send it in the world without a scratch. God bless.